GhastlyGarlic Episode 33. 13 Souls, the Joelma Inferno. Prologue. Haunting the cemetery. In the quiet of the São Paulo cemetery, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faint echoes of sorrow and despair. The graves of the 13 unidentified victims of the Joelma Building fire lay in a secluded corner, marked by simple headstones that bore no names. These were the 13 unknown graves, a somber reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded in the heart of the city. The fire had broken out in the 70s, a catastrophic event that claimed many lives and left scars on the city that would never fully heal. The Joelma Building, once a symbol of modernity and progress, was now infamous for the horrors that had occurred within its walls. The victims, unable to escape the inferno, had perished in the most agonizing way, their final moments filled with terror and pain. After the fire, the bodies that could not be identified were buried together in a mass grave. The cemetery caretaker at the time, Luis Núñez, had overseen their interment. Luis was a man of simple faith, who believed in the sanctity of the dead and the peace that should come with eternal rest. Yet, as the days turned into nights, he found himself disturbed by the sounds emanating from the graves. It began as faint moans, almost indistinguishable from the natural sounds of the night. But soon, the cries grew louder, filled with anguish and a desperate plea for help. The cemetery became a place of unease, where visitors and mourners reported hearing the sorrowful wails of the departed. Luis, unable to bear the constant lamentations, sought a way to bring peace to the restless souls. In a desperate attempt to quiet the cries, he filled glasses with water and placed them on the graves, hoping to extinguish the eternal fire that seemed to burn within their spirits. To his astonishment, the moaning ceased, if only for a short while. Word spread of Luis's act, and soon, visitors to the cemetery began to bring their own offerings of water, placing glasses on the graves as a gesture of compassion and remembrance. The 13 unknown graves became a focal point for those seeking to connect with the past, to offer solace to the spirits trapped between worlds. But the peace was fleeting. The cries would return, haunting the cemetery and those who dared to enter it. The spirits of the 13 souls lingered, unable to move on, their pain and suffering echoing through the years. The Joelma Building, too, remained a site of paranormal activity, a place where the past refused to be forgotten. Chapter 1: The Daily Lives of the 13 Souls. In the days leading up to the fire, the Joelma Building was a bustling hub of activity. People from all walks of life filled its offices and hallways, each with their own stories, dreams, and struggles. Among them were the 13 souls who would become forever linked by tragedy. Lucas, a young and ambitious lawyer, arrived early each morning, his mind focused on his burgeoning career. He was determined to make a name for himself, to rise above his humble beginnings and provide a better life for his family. His colleagues admired his dedication, though some envied his drive. Marina, a seasoned executive, was known for her no-nonsense attitude and sharp mind. She had worked her way up the corporate ladder, breaking barriers in a male-dominated industry. Her office was a testament to her success, filled with awards and accolades that marked her achievements. Anna, a single mother of 2, worked as a receptionist on the ground floor. Her days were spent juggling phone calls and appointments, all while worrying about her children. She often stayed late, hoping to earn enough to make ends meet. Eduardo, a maintenance worker, knew every nook and cranny of the building. His job was thankless but essential, keeping the building running smoothly. He took pride in his work, even if it went unnoticed by most. Paulo, a junior accountant, was fresh out of university and eager to prove himself. He idolized Lucas and hoped to one day achieve similar success. His desk was cluttered with textbooks and financial reports, a testament to his dedication. Isabella, a creative soul, worked in the advertising department. Her vibrant personality and artistic talent brought life to the otherwise sterile office environment. She dreamed of one day opening her own art gallery. Carlos, a security guard, patrolled the building with a keen eye. His presence was a comfort to many, his friendly demeanor making him a beloved figure among the staff. He took his job seriously, always vigilant and ready to help. Roberto, a janitor, moved through the building with a quiet grace. He had seen it all, the highs and lows of the people who worked there. His wisdom and kindness made him a confidant to many, though he rarely spoke of his own troubles. Lucia, a stern but fair manager, oversaw the operations of several departments. She was respected and feared in equal measure, her decisions shaping the daily lives of her subordinates. Despite her tough exterior, she cared deeply for her team. Felipe, a young intern, was just starting his journey in the corporate world. He looked up to Marina and Lucas, hoping to one day follow in their footsteps. His youthful enthusiasm brought a breath of fresh air to the office. Maria, an administrative assistant, kept everything running smoothly behind the scenes. Her meticulous nature and attention to detail made her indispensable, though she often felt overlooked. João, a delivery man, was a familiar face to everyone in the building. His cheerful disposition and willingness to lend a hand made him a favorite among the staff. He often stayed for a chat, bringing a bit of joy to everyone's day. Sophia, a financial analyst, was known for her sharp mind and quick wit. She had a knack for numbers and a passion for solving complex problems. Her colleagues admired her brilliance, even if they couldn't always keep up with her. These 13 souls, each with their own lives and dreams, moved through the Joelma Building, unaware of the fate that awaited them. The days passed in a blur of meetings, deadlines, and everyday interactions, the mundane rhythms of life masking the darkness that lay ahead. As the day of the fire approached, a sense of unease began to settle over the building. Strange occurrences, easily dismissed at first, started to become more frequent. Lights flickered, cold drafts swept through the halls, and eerie whispers could be heard in the dead of night. Lucas, ever the skeptic, brushed off the odd happenings. Just the building settling, he would say, though even he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Marina, on the other hand, felt a chill whenever she walked the halls, as if unseen eyes were following her every move. Anna, exhausted from her long hours, began to see shadows out of the corner of her eye. She told herself it was just fatigue, but the feeling of dread grew with each passing day. Eduardo and Paolo, working late one night, heard strange noises coming from the basement, but found nothing when they went to investigate. Isabella's once vibrant office felt cold and lifeless, her creative spark dimmed by an unseen force. Carlos, patrolling the building, often felt a presence behind him, turning to find empty halls. Roberto, cleaning late at night, heard whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. Lucia, ever the pragmatist, tried to maintain order, but even she couldn't deny the growing tension among her staff. Felipe, eager to prove himself, found it harder to focus, his thoughts clouded by an inexplicable fear. Maria and João, both usually cheerful, felt the weight of the unseen pressing down on them. Sophia, ever analytical, couldn't find a logical explanation for the strange occurrences. She felt a growing sense of urgency, a need to solve the mystery before it was too late. But despite their efforts to understand, the darkness continued to spread, inching closer to the inevitable. And then, on that fateful day, the fire broke out. It started small, a spark in the electrical system, but quickly grew into an inferno. The building's outdated safety measures failed, trapping many inside. The 13 souls, caught in the chaos, found themselves fighting for their lives. The fire spread rapidly, the heat and smoke overwhelming. Panic set in as people scrambled to escape, the screams of the trapped echoing through the halls. Lucas, Marina, Anna, Eduardo, Paolo, Isabella, Carlos, Roberto, Lucia, Felipe, Maria, João, and Sophia were among those who could not find a way out. In their final moments, they were consumed by fear and pain, their cries for help going unanswered. The fire raged on, devouring everything in its path, leaving behind only ashes and sorrow. And so, the 13 souls perished, their lives cut short by the flames. Their spirits, filled with unresolved anguish, remained bound to the Joelma Building. The tragedy left a mark on the city, a wound that would never fully heal. Chapter 2, The Fire. The day dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the darkness that awaited. The Joelma Building, bathed in the morning light, stood tall and proud, oblivious to the fate that would soon befall it. Lucas arrived early, as usual, his mind focused on his work. He barely noticed the flickering lights, or the cold drafts that swept through the lobby. Marina, ever the professional, was already in her office, preparing for a meeting with a high-profile client. Anna, juggling her responsibilities as a receptionist and a mother, was already at her desk, answering calls and scheduling appointments. Eduardo and Paolo, working in the basement, were focused on a repair job, unaware of the danger lurking in the walls. Isabella, inspired by the morning light, was sketching out a new design, her vibrant energy masking the unease she felt. Carlos, making his rounds, greeted everyone with a smile, though his eyes betrayed his own sense of foreboding. Roberto, ever diligent, was cleaning the upper floors, his mind occupied by the whispers he had heard the night before. Lucia, overseeing the day's operations, was dealing with a crisis in the marketing department, her mind too busy to notice the signs. Felipe, eager to impress, was busy with a report, his thoughts consumed by the task at hand. Maria, managing the administrative chaos, was too focused on her work to pay attention to the strange occurrences. João, delivering packages, was his usual cheerful self, bringing a bit of joy to the office. Sophia, analyzing financial data, was lost in her own world, her sharp mind missing the subtle hints of danger. The day progressed as usual, the mundane rhythms of office life masking the growing darkness. And then, it happened. A spark in the electrical system, a small flame that quickly grew into an inferno. The fire spread rapidly, fueled by outdated wiring and flammable materials. Panic set in as the alarms blared, the halls filling with smoke and heat. Lucas, trapped on the upper floors, tried to find a way out, but the flames were relentless. Marina, her calm exterior shattered, fought to breathe as the smoke filled her office. Anna, her thoughts on her children, struggled to escape the reception area, but the fire blocked her path. Eduardo and Paolo, caught in the basement, were overwhelmed by the heat and smoke, their cries for help unheard. Isabella, her artistic spirit unbroken, tried to find an exit, but the flames closed in. Carlos, ever vigilant, attempted to guide people to safety, but the fire was too fierce. Roberto, his quiet grace replaced by desperation, fought to survive, but the smoke was too thick. Lucia, her leadership tested, tried to maintain order, but the chaos was too great. Felipe, his youthful enthusiasm turned to terror, struggled to find a way out. Maria, her meticulous nature failing her, was trapped by the flames. João, his cheerful disposition shattered, fought to survive, but the fire was too strong. Sophia, her sharp mind unable to find a solution, was consumed by the flames. The fire raged on, the screams of the trapped echoing through the halls. The building, once a symbol of progress, was now a towering inferno, its occupants fighting for their lives. The 13 souls, bound by fate, perished in the flames, their final moments filled with terror and pain. The Joelma Building, now a charred shell, stood as a testament to the tragedy. The spirits of the 13 souls, unable to find peace, remained bound to the building, their cries for help echoing through the years. The fire had claimed their lives, but their spirits remained, a haunting reminder of the horrors that had occurred within those walls. Chapter 3: The Elevator of Terror. The fire had taken its toll, leaving behind a blackened ruin and a city in mourning. Yet, for those who had perished within the Joelma Building, death was not an end, but a new beginning in an unending nightmare. In the days following the fire, the building's reputation as a site of tragedy and horror only grew. Tales of eerie occurrences began to spread, the most chilling of which centered around the building's elevator. The elevator, once a mundane part of daily life, had become a vessel of terror, where the 13 souls lingered, their presence felt by anyone who dared to step inside. Lucas, Marina, Anna, Eduardo, Paolo, Isabella, Carlos, Roberto, Lucia, Felipe, Maria, João, and Sophia, their spirits were bound to the elevator, their final moments replaying in an endless loop. The elevator became a conduit for their anguish, a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thinnest. Visitors to the abandoned building reported strange experiences. The elevator would move on its own, stopping at floors where no one had pressed the button. The air inside was always cold, regardless of the weather outside, and the walls seemed to vibrate with an unseen energy. One night, a security guard named Victor, new to his job, was making his rounds. The building, despite its derelict state, still required occasional oversight. Victor had heard the stories, but dismissed them as superstitions. As he approached the elevator, he felt a chill run down his spine. The doors slid open with a creak, revealing the dimly lit interior. Hesitant but determined, Victor stepped inside. He pressed the button for the top floor, and the doors closed with a metallic thud. The elevator lurched upwards, and almost immediately, the temperature dropped. Victor could see his breath forming in the air. He tried to shake off the unease, but then, the lights began to flicker. The elevator stopped abruptly between floors. The overhead light flickered off, plunging Victor into darkness. He reached for his flashlight, but before he could turn it on, a chorus of whispers filled the cramped space. The voices were indistinct, overlapping in a cacophony of pain and fear. Suddenly, the emergency light flickered on, casting a dim, eerie glow. In the faint light, Victor saw shadows moving along the walls. Faces appeared in the reflective surfaces, their eyes filled with anguish. He could hear the distinct sound of someone crying, a mournful wail that echoed in the confined space. The elevator began to shake violently. Victor clung to the handrail, his heart pounding in his chest. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, and he could make out words, pleas for help, cries for mercy, voices calling out names. And then, the elevator resumed its ascent. The doors opened to the top floor, but Victor was too terrified to step out. He pressed the button for the ground floor, desperate to escape. The elevator descended smoothly, the oppressive atmosphere lifting slightly, but the cold lingered. As the doors opened again, Victor stumbled out, his mind reeling from the experience. He could still hear the whispers, faint but persistent, as he fled the building. That night, he resigned from his job, vowing never to return to the Joelma Building. Chapter 4: Ghostly Apparitions. Despite the fire and the subsequent abandonment, the Joelma Building continued to draw the curious and the brave, ghost hunters, thrill seekers, and those searching for answers to the unexplained. They came with cameras and recording equipment, hoping to capture evidence of the supernatural. Among these visitors was a group of paranormal investigators led by Teresa, a seasoned investigator with years of experience. Her team included Bruno, a tech expert, Gabriella, a medium, and Raphael, a skeptic who believed that science could explain the unexplainable. Their first night in the Joelma Building was filled with anticipation and a sense of foreboding. The building, silent and foreboding, seemed to watch them with unseen eyes. As they set up their equipment, Gabriella sensed a presence, a feeling of being watched that made her skin crawl. The team decided to split up. Teresa and Gabriella headed to the upper floors where the fire had been most intense, while Bruno and Raphael stayed on the lower levels to monitor the equipment. Teresa and Gabriella moved cautiously through the charred remains of offices and hallways. The air was thick with the scent of smoke, even years after the fire. Gabriella paused outside the elevator, her hand resting on the cold metal doors. "They are here," she whispered, her voice trembling. Suddenly, the elevator doors slid open, and a blast of cold air hit them. Teresa shone her flashlight inside, revealing an empty, yet ominous space. They stepped inside, and Gabriella closed her eyes, reaching out with her senses. Images flooded her mind, the final moments of the 13 souls, their terror and desperation. She saw Lucas trying to break through a wall of flame, Marina huddled under her desk, Anna crying out for her children. The scenes were vivid and heart-wrenching. Teresa's voice broke through the vision. "Gabriella, are you okay?" she asked, concern in her eyes. Gabriella nodded, her face pale. "We need to go to the 13th floor," she said. "That's where it all happened." They made their way up the stairs, each step echoing in the silence. The 13th floor was a blackened wasteland, the remnants of the fire still evident. Gabriella's senses were on high alert, the presence of the spirits overwhelming. As they moved through the floor, they heard footsteps behind them, but when they turned, there was no one there. Shadows darted in the corners of their vision, and faint whispers filled the air. Bruno and Raphael, meanwhile, were experiencing their own strange occurrences. The equipment picked up unusual electromagnetic readings, and the temperature fluctuations were extreme. Raphael, ever the skeptic, tried to explain it away, but Bruno's unease grew. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the building, followed by a blood-curdling scream. Bruno and Raphael ran towards the sound, meeting Teresa and Gabriella in the stairwell. "What was that?" Raphael asked, his bravado shaken. "I don't know," Teresa replied, "but we need to stick together." The scream had come from the basement. They descended into the darkness, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. The basement was a maze of debris and shadows, and the air was thick with an oppressive energy. Gabriella's breath caught in her throat as they reached the source of the scream. There, in the dim light, stood the apparitions of the 13 souls. They were translucent, their forms flickering like old film. Their eyes were hollow, filled with a pain that seemed to reach out and touch the living. The spirits moved towards them, their faces contorted in agony. Gabriella felt their emotions wash over her: fear, anger, sorrow. She fell to her knees, overwhelmed by the intensity. Teresa stepped forward, her voice steady. "We come in peace. We want to help you find rest." The spirits paused, their expressions softening slightly. One of them, Lucas, stepped forward. "We are trapped," he said, his voice a whisper. "We need to be freed." Teresa nodded. "We will do everything we can to help you, but we need to understand what keeps you here." Lucas looked around at his fellow spirits. "The fire was just the beginning. There is something darker here, something that holds us in this place." As he spoke, the temperature dropped further, and a sense of malevolence filled the air. The investigators felt it too, a dark presence, ancient and powerful, that seemed to revel in the suffering of the trapped souls. "We need to leave," Gabriella said, her voice urgent. "We need to regroup and figure out how to fight this." The team retreated from the basement, their minds reeling from the encounter. They knew they were up against something far more sinister than they had anticipated. The Joelma Building, with its tragic history and restless spirits, had become a battleground between the living and the dead, and the darkness that sought to keep them trapped. Chapter 5: The Darkness Revealed. Back at their temporary base, Teresa, Bruno, Gabriella, and Raphael sat in silence, absorbing the gravity of what they had encountered. The spirits of the 13 souls were not the only entities haunting the Joelma Building. There was something much darker at play. "We need to understand this dark presence," Teresa began, her voice steady but filled with determination. "If we are going to help those souls find peace, we need to confront whatever is keeping them here." Bruno nodded, his eyes on the screens displaying the data they'd collected. The electromagnetic readings were off the charts in the basement. "Whatever this presence is, it's powerful." Gabriella, still shaken from the encounter, spoke softly. "I felt its malevolence. It's ancient, and it feeds on suffering. The fire, the deaths, they gave it power." Raphael, the skeptic, had a newfound respect for the paranormal. "So how do we fight something like that? It's not like we can just call an exorcist. We need to do more research," Teresa said. "We need to find out if there's any history of dark rituals or malevolent entities tied to the location before the building was constructed." The team spent the next few days delving into archives, interviewing local historians, and consulting with other paranormal experts. They uncovered a chilling history. Long before the Joelma Building stood, the land had been the site of a colonial-era execution ground. Hundreds of condemned souls had met their end there, and their suffering had left a dark stain on the land. One name kept coming up in their research: Afonso, a notorious executioner known for his cruelty. His malevolent spirit, fueled by centuries of torment, seemed to be the dark presence holding the souls captive. Armed with this knowledge, the team prepared to return to the Joelma Building. They gathered equipment designed to combat dark energies, protective amulets, cleansing herbs, and tools for rituals that could banish malevolent spirits. Chapter 6: The Confrontation. The night was eerily calm as they approached the building. The city seemed to hold its breath, aware that something momentous was about to happen. Teresa led the way, her confidence bolstered by their research and preparations. Inside, the air was thick with tension. The elevator seemed to hum with anticipation as they ascended to the 13th floor. Gabriella closed her eyes, reaching out to the spirits. "We are here to help," she whispered, hoping they could hear her. As they reached the 13th floor, the dark presence made itself known. The temperature plummeted, and a thick, oppressive darkness filled the hallway. The team felt a wave of malevolence wash over them, almost suffocating in its intensity. A shadowy figure materialized before them, the spirit of Afonso, his eyes burning with hatred. "You dare to challenge me?" His voice echoed, cold and hollow. Teresa stepped forward, holding a protective amulet. "We will not let you continue to torment these souls," she declared. "You have no power over the living or the dead." Afonso's form flickered, and the hallway shook with his rage. "You think you can banish me?" he hissed. "I am bound to this place by the blood and suffering of countless souls." Bruno activated the equipment, creating a protective barrier around them. Gabriella began to chant, invoking ancient rites designed to cleanse the space of malevolent energies. The air crackled with energy as the ritual took effect. The spirits of the 13 souls appeared, their forms translucent but determined. Lucas, Marina, Anna, and the others stood beside the team, lending their strength to the ritual. "We are not alone," Lucas said, his voice steady. "We have each other." Afonso's form wavered, the dark energy around him faltering. The combined power of the living and the dead was too much for him to withstand. With a final, furious scream, he dissolved into the darkness, his malevolent presence banished from the Joelma building. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and a sense of peace settled over the floor. The spirits of the 13 souls began to fade, their forms becoming lighter, more serene. "Thank you," Marina whispered, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We can finally rest." Gabriella felt tears in her eyes as she watched them go. "You're free now," she said softly. "Rest in peace." Chapter 7, The Aftermath. With the dark presence banished, the Joelma building began to feel like just another abandoned structure. The oppressive energy was gone, replaced by a quiet stillness. The team, exhausted but triumphant, packed up their equipment and left the building for the last time. In the weeks that followed, news of their success spread, and the story of the Joelma building took on a new dimension. It was no longer just a place of tragedy, but a testament to the power of courage and compassion. The spirits of the 13 souls were remembered not just for their tragic end, but for their resilience and strength. The team members went their separate ways, each carrying with them the lessons learned from their encounter with the supernatural. Teresa continued her work as a paranormal investigator, more determined than ever to help those in need. Bruno delved deeper into the technical aspects of paranormal research, fascinated by the intersection of science and the supernatural. Gabriella, her faith in the unseen world reaffirmed, used her gifts to bring comfort to those haunted by their own ghosts. Raphael, now a believer, dedicated himself to uncovering the truths hidden in the shadows, using his skepticism as a tool to seek out the real from the imagined. The Joelma building stood as a silent witness to their bravery, its dark history slowly fading into the past. But the memory of that night, of the spirits they had helped and the darkness they had faced, remained with them, a reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead, and the eternal struggle for peace and redemption. Chapter 8, Echoes of the Past. Years passed, and the Joelma building, now a symbol of both tragedy and triumph, drew visitors from all over the world. It stood as a somber reminder of the fire and the 13 souls who had perished, but also of the courage of those who had confronted the darkness within its walls. People came to pay their respects, to learn the history, and to seek closure. However, for some, the Joelma building still held an irresistible allure, a call that echoed through time. One such visitor was Clara, a young journalist from Rio de Janeiro. She had heard the stories of the Joelma building and was drawn to its haunted past. Clara was determined to write a comprehensive article on the events, the hauntings, and the investigations that had taken place there. She wanted to uncover new details, to tell a story that had never been told before. Clara arrived at the Joelma building on a rainy afternoon, the sky dark and brooding. She was armed with a notebook, a camera, and a digital recorder, ready to capture every nuance of the haunted site. The building loomed before her, its presence imposing despite the years of neglect. As Clara stepped inside, she felt a chill run down her spine. The air was heavy, as if the building itself remembered the pain and fear of its past. She began her exploration, starting with the lobby, where the fire had spread so rapidly. The walls were charred, the floorboards creaked, and the smell of smoke still lingered faintly in the air. Clara made her way to the elevator, its doors now permanently open, revealing an empty shaft. She placed her hand on the cool metal and closed her eyes, trying to imagine the terror of those final moments. She activated her recorder and began to speak, her voice echoing in the empty space. The Joelma building, once a bustling hub of activity, now stands as a ghostly reminder of one of the deadliest fires in Brazilian history. The spirits of those who perished are said to still roam these halls, their cries for help echoing through the years. Today, I hope to uncover some of the secrets they left behind. Clara moved through the building, her footsteps the only sound in the eerie silence. She reached the 13th floor, the epicenter of the tragedy. Here, the energy felt different, heavier, more oppressive. Clara took a deep breath and began to explore, her camera capturing the desolate scene. As she walked through the charred remains of offices and hallways, Clara felt a strange sensation, as if she were being watched. She turned, but there was no one there. The feeling persisted, growing stronger with each step. She stopped in front of what had once been a conference room, and felt a sudden wave of sadness wash over her. Clara activated her recorder again. This room feels different. There's a presence here, something lingering. It's as if the walls themselves are weeping for the lives lost. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and Clara's breath formed in the air. The building seemed to come alive around her. Whispers filled the room, indistinct but urgent. Clara's heart raced as she tried to make sense of the voices. "Help us." The words were faint, almost lost in the cacophony of whispers. Clara's eyes widened as she realized what she was hearing. The voices of the 13 souls, still trapped, still seeking release. "I'm here to help," Clara said, her voice trembling. "Tell me what I need to do." The whispers grew louder, more desperate. Clara felt a hand brush her shoulder, and she turned to see a faint apparition, a young woman, her face twisted in anguish. It was Marina, one of the 13 souls. "Please," Marina's voice was a mere whisper. "Free us from this torment." Clara felt tears in her eyes. How can I help you?" Marina's form flickered, and she pointed towards the elevator. "The darkness. It still holds us. You must confront it." Clara nodded, determination replacing her fear. She made her way back to the elevator, her mind racing. She had read about the dark presence, the malevolent spirit that had been banished by Teresa and her team. But had they truly succeeded? Was the darkness still lurking, waiting for a chance to reclaim its power? Clara stepped into the elevator, the air inside frigid. She pressed the button for the basement, where the final confrontation had taken place. The elevator descended slowly, the hum of the machinery the only sound. As she reached the basement, the doors opened to reveal a pitch-black void. Clara took a deep breath and stepped out, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The basement was a maze of shadows and debris, the oppressive energy almost palpable. She felt the presence of the dark spirit, its malevolence pressing down on her. "Show yourself," Clara called out, her voice echoing in the void. "I know you're here." The air seemed to ripple, and a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness. Afonso, the executioner, his eyes burning with hatred. "You dare to challenge me?" His voice was a hiss, filled with venom. Clara stood her ground, her heart pounding. "I will not let you continue to torment these souls. They deserve peace." Afonso's form flickered, his rage palpable. "You think you can banish me? I am bound to this place by the blood and suffering of countless souls." Clara raised her recorder, the device now a symbol of her determination. "I will do whatever it takes to free them. You have no power over me." Afonso's eyes narrowed, and he lunged towards her, his form dissolving into a cloud of darkness. Clara felt a surge of cold, but she stood her ground, her resolve unbroken. She began to recite a cleansing incantation she had learned from her research, her voice steady and clear. The darkness around her seemed to writhe and convulse, Afonso's form struggling to maintain its shape. The spirits of the 13 souls appeared, their forms translucent but determined. They joined Clara, their voices merging with hers in a powerful chant. The air crackled with energy, the oppressive darkness lifting. Afonso's form wavered, his malevolence no match for the combined power of the living and the dead. With a final, furious scream, he dissolved into nothingness, his presence banished from the Joelma Building forever. The basement was suddenly still, the air clear and calm. Clara felt a wave of relief wash over her as the spirits of the 13 souls began to fade, their forms becoming lighter, more serene. "Thank you," Marina whispered, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We can finally rest." Clara watched as the spirits disappeared, a sense of peace settling over her. She knew that the Joelma Building, once a place of tragedy and terror, was now a place of healing and redemption. She made her way back to the ground floor, her heart light. As she stepped outside, the rain had stopped, and the sky was clear. Clara looked back at the building, a sense of accomplishment filling her. The Joelma Building had been a battleground, but now, it was a place of peace. The spirits of the 13 souls had found their rest, and the darkness that had plagued them was gone. Clara knew that their story would live on, a testament to the power of courage, compassion, and the enduring struggle for peace and redemption. The end.
Thanks for tuning in to our podcast. If you enjoyed our exploration of ghosts, mythical creatures, and urban legends, please share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling episodes. Until next time, my beloved listeners.